from this day to that, for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Little update, we do have some storms moving through the area, and we did get some power flickering there. So, be warned, we did have a possible tornado touchdown in Kokomo, which is a little southwest of my area. We have another front coming through, so bear with us if we have a connection problem. Now, I don't know if anybody heard, because, you know, it kind of gets whitewashed when this happens, but the Fed announcing, you know, oh, we'll print another, you know, $4 trillion of quantitative easing. And a lot of people think, oh, that should make gold prices go up, and not really, just the talk of it. We've seen gold prices actually drop because it looks like someone cashed in a amount of their gold, more than likely, to prepare. So a little bit of gold got dropped on the market, but people actually were expecting gold to drop even more than what it did because of the amount of gold, but you didn't see it do that. That's probably possibly due to the fact that they're talking about quantitative easing, which again, you know, devalues the dollar in your pocket. So if you're buying gold and silver with that dollar right now, when they devalue that dollar, you can hold on to the value through gold and silver, because that is when you'll see gold and silver go up in price. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, sorry. Trying not to run my browsers until I'm already dialed into the network, hoping that would help. Okay. Now, with this quantitative easing, it's basically signaling that the Fed doesn't know what to do anymore. Well, we could just print more money. We know that won't help, but it will satisfy the public enough not to come after us. it'll make an illusion for a short period of time. Again, why they have to continually do this over and over and over and over, because it doesn't work unless you do it over and over, and it's still a fallacy that eventually that bubble will burst. And we have economists talking globally about the end of 2016 being bad, and that central banks around the world are continuing to do what has put us in the situation, and warning that will ultimately lead to that bubble burst, and by the end of 2016. Others talk about, well, they want it to burst before the end of 2016 to bring in martial law. Again, conspiracy theory, there's nothing suggesting that, no evidence out at least, suggesting that this is a planned thing, but there's enough evidence out there that there are groups that are trying to create chaos. Why? Those are the questions that we're trying to answer, but we understand the end game. And again, that goes back to global control. A lot of these people, I believe, have been brainwashed into believing in this philosophy. Even people in the Federal Reserve that aren't, the owners of the Federal Reserve, but the people in there, they believe this stuff will work, and when they don't see it work like they were told it would, and now they are finally seeing, this is a non-win game. I do want to get to a Ron Paul Liberty report. I'm doing this a little bit different, running a second device off of my soundboard, so hopefully we don't have any audio problems now. Just give me a second, and I can bring that up. Okay. Okay, Ron Paul Liberty report. What's up with what's Iran up to, and Fed plans new $4 trillion quantitative easing. So hopefully we don't have any problems with the audio.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is co-host Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, very good. And today we're going to do something a little bit differently. We're going to deal with two items. And the first item we're going to be talking about is the question of whether or not the Russians are still using an air base in Iran to bomb Syria, which is significant, and there's some questions about that now. And the other item is a working paper for the Federal Reserve came up with the astounding prediction that they better prepare for the next bailout of another $4 trillion. That's significant, too. They've pumped in that much already, and they're already planning for the next one. But anyway, on the first item, there's contrary articles about this. It's only been a week ago, I guess, when they started using an Iranian base to bomb Syria. And it seemed to be not a big deal. Nobody was yelling and screaming. We knew the Iranians and the Russians were invited by Assad to help save his regime, and it was in their interest to do so. So it wasn't a surprise that they're allies. Everybody knew that. But all of a sudden, we started seeing articles here just in the last 24 hours. And one major article with a major headline from the New York Times. And it claims Iran revokes Russia's use of the airbase. I mean, this is, outright clear cut. It revokes. But as we delved into this, it doesn't look like that as absolutely, because that they claim that it's a spokesman for the foreign affairs office, said this, and we're not sure where this came from. And you'll comment on that, I'm sure. But also, there was something on Radio Free Europe that said the Laranjani, the Speaker of the Parliament, said, no, this isn't true. This deal is still on and it's still happening. They're mainly refueling, but we're close friends. And but I found it interesting when they asked, what's the United States position? What do they know? And they said, well, it's just not clear. Well, that's about right. I think we spend up to $80 billion on surveillance. They know everything that we do, but it's not clear to the United States government really what's going on. They're probably telling the truth. To them, it probably wasn't clear because they didn't tell us a week before it was going to happen. So Al Jazeera, which is another source, it's definitely stopped. So we have all these conflicting reports. It is significant. It isn't the end that ends all, on the skirmishes and the wars that are potentially going to be started over there. But I think it's significant. So what about the headline on the New York Times? First off, Iran revokes Russia's use of the airbase, but whom are we going to believe?
It really does have the whiff of disinformation, this whole thing, because, when this was announced a few days ago, it was a significant development. This is a development of a real strategic partnership for Russia to be able to use a base so much closer to Syria to bomb. And this is mostly around Aleppo, which is where really the Al-Qaeda has its last stand. And if they're defeated there, it really will be a big blow for the insurrection. So them able to use the base is a big deal. And I think panic and alarm bells were going off in Washington. And then all of a sudden you see these stories, which, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, something big must have happened. And, we were preparing for the show. And I started reading it because I want to find out, okay, where is the declaration? What exactly did the Iranian government say? And nowhere in this New York Times story is there a definitive quote. There's a general who said, they were behaving a little bit ungentlemanly by bragging about it. But that was it. There was just no source.
Well, it seems to me then Laranjani might be the closest to being the official spokesman for the Iranians, and he says we're still doing it, and we're still, working, together to, to save Assad from the foreigners that are coming in. But it seems like there are some people who would like to create divisiveness and show, the Russians aren't getting along with the Iranians and stir up trouble, stir up the factions within Iran, because there's never uniform beliefs on all these issues. So maybe they're trying to make things look a lot worse than really they are.
Pepe Escobar coined the term, I think he coined the term, the empire of chaos. And it seems more like that, more likely. On the one hand, as you point out, they want to highlight, the mainstream media in the U.S. government wants to highlight the infighting between Russia and Iran. But on the other hand, U.S. policies are driving them into each other's arms when it comes to Syria. Neither Russia nor Iran want to see Al-Qaeda take over, which the U.S. is backing by proxy and indirectly and even directly. None of them want to see this, so why are they pushing into their arms? Look at the Denver Post said Obama and the U.S. should be alarmed by Russia's operating out of Iran. Well, why? If they're hitting Al-Qaeda and ISIS and taking them out, why should we be alarmed? We should be happy. It'll save us the jet fuel.
Well, I think just yesterday or so, we saw that our government they were going to get ready to change policy. Just in talk, our government was going to direct their attention only at getting rid of Assad and forget about these rebels because they're not doing a very good job. And yet, who would ever believe there's any Democrat or any Republican that isn't super gung-ho to get rid of ISIS? And and the American people are with them, unfortunately, because they're irrational at times about this. Yeah. They're with them. But then again, on real policy, they don't want, if the Russians or the Iranians go after Al-Qaeda or after ISIS, they object to it. So it is, I think our policy is schizophrenic, to tell you the truth.
And I wrote a little piece yesterday because I watched the press spokesman of the Pentagon do his daily press briefing, and it was astonishing. And even the people there who are used to this were pretty surprised because essentially, Peter Cook, I believe his name is, essentially what the spokesman said was that we are establishing a no-fly zone over parts of Syria. And he specifically warned Russia and Syria against flying in the area when the U.S. or its coalition is operating within Syria. And that's a major, major shift, I think. And it changes a lot of things on the ground. But, the U.S. is working with the YPG, the Kurdish militias in that area, and they've been firing at Assad's forces. And then when Assad's forces fire back, they're attacked. But now Turkey is firing on the YPG that the U.S. is backing. So it's like alles gegen alles. Everyone is fighting everyone in Syria.
Yeah, and I watch part of that as well. And the State Department person, the early part of it sounded pretty good. We're working for peace and we're working for this. Outsiders should stay out, until the conclusion was, well, what we need to do is get those Russians to quit supporting Assad, and quit supporting. He wouldn't say the word, but we're for regime change. It's our job, So they say one thing, and I thought, this sounds, this is typical, the politicians. They say one thing, they mean something else, and then they contradict everything they claim they believe in. They contradict it, and they have a different policy.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
There was one statement made by a group in Iran that I found fascinating, and they sort of were questioning whether or not, they should have the Russian planes landing there, which is, certainly their prerogative on debating it at home. But the group said that just possibly we should reassess this because it's anti-constitutional. And I thought, that's interesting. They have people that, even though on the surface it may look like it's in their best interest, this group and this individual is saying, well, it looks like it could be anti-constitutional. It's like maybe they should get more permission, and maybe their constitution that you have to have a declaration of war. And I thought, well, it's too bad that we don't have a few people in Washington thinking along those lines.
Yeah, it was an interesting story because, we're told that Iran's parliament is sort of a monolithic structure that is heeding the Ayatollah. But here, there seems to be a pretty good debate, not only about whether it's constitutional to allow the Russians to use the base, but also the issue of civilian control of the military, because I think the Speaker of Parliament, Larijani's put down of this general was basically keep in your place. You don't have a role to talk about this policy. And, it's amazing they're talking about their constitution where we have troops on the ground in Syria completely unconstitutional.
But we're spreading our exceptionalism, and we're spreading democracy, and we're spreading peace and prosperity, so we can't be challenged. Unless you're a patriotic American, then you should be permitted to challenge policy, but that's another story. Okay, I want to go on to item number 2, which I mentioned at the opening, and that has to do with this working paper by one of the Federal Reserve Board staff people, and it came out, they released it, and it's preparing the people for what's coming. The Fed and others are meeting at Jackson Hole this weekend to solve all the monetary problems of the world, and everything will be okay next week. But just in case there's a downturn, they're recognizing that they don't have much leeway to deal with a downturn. They know a downturn's coming. Everybody knows that they always come because it's inevitable to have a downturn after you have an artificial boom time. And the Fed creates that, so they have a guarantee the downturn. It's just a matter of when it's coming and what exactly will precipitate it. I believe it's already started in many areas of the economy. Anyway, they're preparing for this, and they want to assure the people that they're on top of it and they're thinking about it. So their proposal is not completely new. That might take about another $4 trillion of QE. So they have a problem there, but I'm sure that you're reassured that things will work out okay and that your kids will grow up and be able to get their education and a good job, and we won't have to worry about a healthy economy.
I don't know that $4 trillion is going to find its way, any of it, into our bank accounts.
Yeah.
But, I was reading this morning, too, and the first thing I thought is this is what you warned, forever, of course, but certainly back in when they started slashing the rates, you said this is not working. You're going to get to the point where you're backed up against the wall and there's nowhere left to cut. This is exactly what the Fed said in this memo you talked about.
Right, and the word thrown out, even by our opposition. Well, and I think our friend Paul Krugman might have used those words, that we might have to use helicopter money to just drop it on the people, because that's where their shortcoming comes up. They can inject money into the financial system, but they have no way of knowing where it's going to go. And right now, it has not gone to the people, even though their prime concern was the stock market and Wall Street. But they were hoping, I'm sure they don't want a lousy economy. They were hoping that people would feel wealthier and will go out and spend money and businesses will come back. They have no idea how the economic cycles work, and that you have to liquidate bad investments and bad debt. No, they just print more money. But they've taken it down to zero. And they don't have many options, so they have to think about helicopter money. I can't quite visualize. I mean, I think it's a good example how to think about it, but literally it's not true that they use helicopters. But I think what they're talking about is how do they get the money into the hands of the people so that they spend more money. And there's a lot of ways. The welfare state does that. They're never going to stop Social Security. Unemployment benefits are always going to come. If Obamacare flops like it is, and there's no and the private companies go broke because it was an insane problem, well, the government's going to take over. They're always going to produce money, cash out of thin air, and they will be able to spend it. And that already is an example, because where they spend the most is where the most inflation is, and that is in education and medical care. So they will do that. And the one thing along with the $4 trillion is I believe that as time goes on and the next president is going to have to deal with it, we're going to have a sharp downturn. And neither candidate right now says, what we really should do is spend less money. We should cut back a little bit. When it comes to infrastructure, they're one-upping each other.
Yeah.
They say we have to spend the money, and it sounds good on the surface. They think that's going to help, but it never has helped before. And yet this is what they're going to offer. But they're going to offer a lot more spending. Matter of fact, the spending is going to be automatic, because if more people become unemployed and more people go on food stamps, even though there's been a recovery for a long time, there's not that many. I don't think there's any less people getting food stamps. Nobody quits getting food stamps. They might go and get a part-time job or something. But the food stamps and the housing assistance and the medical assistance, it continues, and it will continue until this insanity ends with people saying, well, this is crazy. This whole idea of zero rate interest rates is so absurd. And, most good economists and most that understand a little history, in particular Jim Grant, he says this hasn't happened in 5,000 years. And they have no leeway. The old conventional thing of mischief and manipulating and economic planning and getting us out of recessions, that can be done to a degree, but eventually people lose confidence in the money.
You were mentioning before we came on that I think it was Grant had something about this strange relationship between the stock market and bonds. It's
yeah. He was saying, well, how can this is a strange world. He was making the point the stocks are at record highs and bonds are at the record low. And the interest rates are so low, and the low interest rate represents depression. He says this is worse than the Great Depression when you look at the bond interest rates, and the stock market says there's great prosperity. So we're living under very special conditions. I wish it weren't so serious, because it's really entertaining to think about all the ramifications of this and how is this going to play out. But unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people suffering. I think a lot of people are suffering, and I think that's why 65 to 70% of the American people are already angry, in spite of the fact that you look out there and there's great prosperity and the stocks are going high. And it was also recently made a point about one group of people who are really buying into our stock market, and that's the Swiss National Bank.
Huh.
You know, they create their credit out of thin air, and they're buying stocks hand over fist, and they're not buying cheap stocks, they're buying good stocks. So that has to be beneficial to the stock market. But I believe that that's more than just one country that does that, because I believe that because we're not allowed to know what the Fed does internationally, I believe there's a lot of mischief in what we do with big banks and foreign governments and foreign central banks. And I believe it's in the world's interest to keep our economy going and the dollar solvent. Even though some are angry and foreigners are buying our bonds and our treasuries less so, there's still an interest. I don't think I cannot conceive of something happening in Jackson Hole this weekend that's an attack on the dollar that stands up to the United States. Look, we're sick and tired of you exporting your inflation, giving us your pieces of paper, and you want us to keep sending you your oil and our cheap products. You know, they're not going to say that, because everybody is in bed with this system, and those who aren't will be punished, because we control the financial system. We can put sanctions on them. We can deny them their defenses, because we promise to defend their country. So that's going to they're not going to have a problem there, and nor will the suggestion and the reassurance that if we run into this trouble, we can pump out another $4 trillion. Well, one day we'll notice that'll come to an end.
It makes you wonder, the average person would see that $4 trillion and your eyes would glaze over. But what would you tell them when they say, well, how's this going to affect me if this $4 trillion is pumped into the economy?
Well, what's going to happen is eventually people will see that the dollar is losing real value and interest rates will go up, and there'll be a lot of inflation. There'll be price inflation, and there is a lot of price inflation, but it'll be to the degree that if you have a currency inflation, that's the type of thing Zimbabwe has and Venezuela. They know how to use helicopters, and they put the money in the hands of the people. But that will not create investments in good businesses. That's not going to all of a sudden we're going to get steel mills back or something like that. It will just bid up the prices. It'll go into that, just like today. In these last 8 years or so, the money has gone in. Stocks have done well. Houses are back doing well, especially very, very expensive houses. Farm real estate has skyrocketed. People expect a correction on that, and expensive houses, they have gone very high. And like I said, education is going to continue to skyrocket. And as Obamacare breaks down, you're going to see a real mess, trying to get health care. And it will be people who can afford it, and the price will go up. And so the people will suffer. The main rule that people have to face up to on currency debasement: first, it destroys the middle class, and second, the prices go up for the poor and the middle class, and they suffer the most. And then you combine that with a weak economy, the more the government does. See, right now, if they have unemployment insurance and pump more money into Social Security, they say, well, that's good. But there will be a point when that doesn't do any good. And if the $4 trillion already didn't help, now they're planning another $4 trillion. They'll get to a point where once you get, well, let's do $8 trillion. All of a sudden, people say, nobody wants this money, and that's when you're going to see this. And people are going to suffer, and there is no answer. It's much easier preventing this problem than it is taking care of it. And once it hits, the most important thing is allowing the correction to occur. Get off this kick that spending will solve our problems, printing will solve our problems, debt, they claim debt.
Sorry, the end of that seems to be having an issue here. Luckily, there was only about 3 minutes left of that, so we'll go ahead and stop that right there. Title of that is What is Iran Up To? And Fed Plans New $4 trillion QE. Ron Paul Liberty Report. Subscribe to him on YouTube and check out RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Now, he talked about, people are going to get wise to it and they're not going to want that money. They're already getting wise to it. Other countries are. There's already many countries looking at other currency as a trade for oil. Again, attempting to end the petrodollar, being the U.S. dollar. The one thing that our dollar does have going for it right now is that oil is traded in it. Now, we do have those storms moving in right now, so if we lose connection again, bear with us here. You'll probably hear some beeping before we do. Battery backup, but it's a small battery backup for now. And I have a lot of stuff running on it. So hopefully we don't get disconnected. But back to the $4 trillion. It's going to be one of those things, right? When they dump it, you're going to be like, oh, yay. And then, no. That's the effect it has on our economy and our dollar, definitely abroad too. So again, it goes back to it's a short-lived thing that it's not going to be extremely effective. I'm trying to bring up this article, but it doesn't seem to go. Sorry, guys. Hopefully, I didn't just lose it. No. Trying to bring up an article. Let me try it one more time. This doesn't work. Okay, now I got the website up. Now if I can find the article again. Okay. Now, if you don't think, we've actually had the Rothschild come out and say that their own banking system is failing, and they're going to buy gold. That's not the only one. This one from Jeff Berwick, DollarVigilante.com. Another billionaire goes all in on the barbarous relic gold, while mainstream media remains silent. Billionaire Crispin Oddy recently released a management letter to his hedge fund clients praising gold and explaining gold products constitute the next great investment wave. He is yet another in a wave of billionaires who have all suddenly been moving massive portions of their portfolio into gold, with one of the latest being George Soros, who moved a significant amount of his portfolio into gold just a few months ago. It's quite likely that both of these individuals are familiar with TDV's Shemitah and Jubilee year analysis. That's not to say that they read TDV. Of course they may and should, but they understand the larger secretive events associated with these occult timelines. They may be, in fact, one reason why Soros and other billionaires have been acting this year to realize gold positions, and why Adi, too, has now moved in that direction. The two men move in the same elitist circle. Soros provided Adi with his first large investment stake, reportedly of some $150 million, when Adi set up his initial hedge fund in the early 90s. And Adi was briefly married to a daughter of Rupert Murdoch and is now married to Nicola Pease, who is reportedly related to one of the founding families of Barclays Bank. Adi has now taken a significant position in Kinross Gold Corporation, purchasing 15.5 million shares of the Canadian gold mining company, valued at $75.7 million on June 30th. But it is his recent management letter, where he speaks about gold historically, that should get your attention. And you can go through and read all this at DollarVigilante.com. But basically, in a lot of occult circles right now, they've been talking about the year of gold. Now we know there's some people that are in some weird circles that, you know, are friends with a lot of these elitists, and there's elitists out there that, you know, believe in the occult stuff, or at least they like to memorize, you know, the past and the occult, you know, pagan religions, and they go along with that. But I think it's way, way, way more simpler than that. They're printing more and more money. Federal Reserve basically has come out and said they really don't have any, you know, any good ideas, because they just keep doing the same thing that is not working. I'm not talking ultra rich and elitists, but a lot of well-off, wealthy people are running to gold. There's something that people are noticing right now, and they are fiercely running away from the U.S. dollar as something that they keep in holding. And that doesn't mean that they don't still have, you know, cash in the bank and holding. What they're doing is taking their new investments and they're, you know, actually putting it into physical gold, not just stocks and companies no, they're putting it into actual gold. So, there's some good things that are coming out of this that people are now waking up. Hold on. All the rich are taking their portfolios into gold. What am I doing? Now, sometimes you have to be a little careful with that because you can get into little tough waters there because they might be trying to manipulate you. But I've said this for a long time that, it doesn't gain value or lose value. Gold and silver hold value. It's the U.S. dollar that loses and gains value. And the problem is we've had this fiat currency, and we've had people trying to run the monetary policy. And we've gone so far away from free market and gold standard that we are witnessing exactly what has been predicted by people like Ron Paul. And we have to be prepared ourselves. This is something that I've been talking about lately, and I really mean it, that we need to be prepared for anything, natural disasters, invasions, just stick to the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. Because we are reaching a very unknown future that in the past we've always had uncertainty, but now we literally have people fearing what is coming next. And we are changed. Talking about the election coming up here, We Are Change put out something, 3 things you need to know about Hillary. And I wanted to play this because about her health crisis. And I think it's very important that we actually question this. They want to play it off like, oh, why are you even asking this question? But remember when they were asking Ron Paul, aren't you too old? Sorry, I'm trying to get this queued up here. Trying to get better signal that way we can qualify signal that way we can not have any glitches here. Okay. Here we go. We are change.
Desk of wearechange.org, and I'm joined by Gary Franchi of the Next News Network. In this video, we're going to talk about a very important topic that Gary has been following very closely, and that, of course, is the Hillary Clinton cough, the Hillary Clinton health issues that has inundated the internet. Gary?
Yeah, Luke, Are you okay over there, Luke?
Sorry, it's the Hillary Clinton cough is completed.
Yeah, that's probably...
Okay. In all seriousness, Gary, the following Hillary Clinton, her scandals are so huge when it comes to Libya, when it comes to the pay and play scandals. Why is the Hillary Clinton health issue such a big issue right now? Why is it so important?
Well, I think what people are seeing here with the Hillary Clinton crisis is, a woman that's really just unfit to serve all around. First of all, we know she's a national security risk. That goes without question. The FBI has already declared that. The military already put out a memo warning soldiers of this woman. And now we're seeing all these pictures. Like, really, really bad optics, Luke, for the campaign. Not just all these email leaks. I mean, of course, the DNC fixing the election for her, all the Bernie Sanders supporters that ended up getting seriously burned in their primaries. I mean, it's like a complete global chaotic mess within that campaign. Now, back to the optics. What we've seen in the most recent couple of weeks, the first thing was the photograph of her struggling to get up the stairs. Now, everyone's like, what's going on here? Why does she need help? And then more information started to come to light because the questions started to be asked. People started, looking for those answers. Suddenly, we see a photograph, and you probably saw it yourself, the Secret Service officer holding a seizure pen that many people believe was for some sort of recurrent seizure problem that she was having. And then, of course, there was the moment she was on stage. She was at a podium. She's about to speak, or she's having trouble speaking. That same officer, who some people believe was not actually Secret Service, but more of a health officer, came up to her and whispered something, some MK Ultra secret code word in her ear, and then she got back on track, right? And the activator word, right? and then
Goldman Sachs.
Hide the money, like whatever the secret code word to activate her back to get her on track was stated, and then of course she continued. Now, what's curious is that there was another video that we published at our channel, went totally viral. She's in her trademark orange jumpsuit, her pantsuit. She's on stage, and all of a sudden the crowd starts to cheer as she goes into some applause line, and suddenly she loses it. She goes blank. She doesn't know what's happening. She loses track. You can see she shifts her weight. She almost goes off balance. It appears as though she's like literally caught in a daze. But that guy doesn't come back on the stage to whisper the key word to get her back on track. And she doesn't even make sense when she returns to her speech. Now, there's a lot of allegations going on about her health. Most importantly, I think, as well, and this is what, when I talk to the average person on the street and I get in these conversations, I bring up, well, everybody knows Dr. Drew. So that's a common denominator with a lot of the sleeping sheep. So when I bring up Dr. Drew, like, what? Dr. Drew said? And then ABC News pulled the story because, well, they're in the bag for Clinton. It's this huge mess, and Hillary Clinton is walking right through it. Well, I should say stumbling through it. And I also need to point out, too, Luke, there was another picture that was published in April of her being literally propped up by three people while she gave a speech, right? There was a person to her left holding up one arm, a person to her right holding up her other forearm, and then someone from her behind holding her up. So this woman has some serious balance issues. Again, there's the other photograph, too, and I'm sure you've seen it, the photograph of her at one of her criminal hearings on Congress, where you can see her glasses. There are slats in her glasses that provided a prism effect, and that is what gives Dr. Drew cause to say, look, this woman has some level of brain damage that is confirmed because of that fall she took so many years ago.
Yeah, the internet is ablaze with different theories out there. There's people saying that she's wearing a catarrh tube. There's people saying that she has Parkinson's. There's people saying that she has a blood clot in her brain. Ultimately, I think the biggest kind of health diagnosis that could be made is that she's a psychopath that laughs about the murder and brutal torture of another world leader that she overtook and put into mass chaos and helped create the rise of ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism and spread it all over the world. Anyway, but just getting back to the original point that we were talking about, what do you think are some of the three most important kind of factors, the sources, the information, the facts when it comes to this case that people should know? What are the three things that stick out to you most that are most trustworthy?
Well, I think if you start with something as mainstream as the Dr. Drew interview that's been suppressed, I think that's a really good primer because it doesn't go into conspiracy land. It doesn't go into conjecture. We're talking about a mainstream doctor, a well-respected doctor, who just simply looks at her medical records and he raises some very strong concerns. I think if you start with your search right there, you're going to get a lot of answers. And what Dr. Drew came up with in that diagnosis, whatever it was, when he was on that radio show for ABC, he stated that he wasn't just so much concerned with her care, but with her diagnosis, but with the care that she's been receiving. He says for somebody of a presidential candidate level, receiving archaic 1950s treatment is very, very strange. And he said that treatment alone could be causing her to have a lot of the symptoms that we're seeing. So I think that's the first place to start. Secondarily, I think that you need to take a look at the erratic behavior when she's on these podiums, Luke. I mean, you see her when the balloons drop, and she has this spastic seizure, and she looks up like she's Finding Dory in Looking for Nemo or some crazy Disney film, and she's been activated again. You take a look at some of these other podium messages where she's providing a speech, and all of a sudden she goes into this kind of epileptic sort of. Some people in our comments when we bring these stories up, Luke, they've sort of diagnosed. We've got a very strong audience, and they said, these are petite seizures, petite mal seizures, not the grand mal seizures that people are used to seeing with these epileptic patients. But these are small seizures, micro seizures that people believe is actually happening with her. So, go ahead.
I was wondering what happened to that Dr. Drew statement that was made, because I know something else happened. And I just wanted to clarify to our audience, the main reason we're covering this is because I turned on Google News today and I put in Hillary Clinton, and you have the Washington Post shilling for Hillary Clinton, saying, no, these are all just crazy conspiracy theories. CNN saying, no, this is not true at all. New York Times is even recommending that Google should censor any of this information coming to light and saying, no, Google should work with the Hillary. Well, they already do. You type in Hillary Clinton body count. No, it's not going to show up on Google. It's going to show up on Bing. It's going to show up on Yahoo. It's going to show up on anywhere else. But back to the original point, what happened to that Dr. Drew interview?
Well, you bring up a good point. And the Dr. Drew interview is another symptom of the major problem we have in this country, and that is the media collusion in the crimes of the global elite who are working to enslave us. And what ABC News did is they buried that interview. As soon as it went live, as soon as people started questioning it, as soon as somebody of the stature of Dr. Drew came out and said, yeah, the woman has brain damage, we need to question that, all of a sudden, you can't have that. You can't have that on a public airways. You can't have the sheep questioning their potential leader as to having brain damage. So therefore, they buried it, 404, not found, memory hold. So you have that happening. And then, of course, you have all the other instances where the media, of course, just recently, Jimmy Kimmel had her on the show, and they were poking fun at the whole thing. That's how they can get around it, by making light of the situation, having her open a pickle jar or whatever she was doing.
Yeah, that pickle jar didn't pop like a normal pickle jar pops when you open it. It was probably pre set up for her.
Of course it was. They weren't going to let her. There would be no chance in hell they would put her on that stage to let her struggle with the can that was suddenly popped already, and then she makes a joke about, oh yeah, just some. That's the latest crazy stuff they're talking about me today. It's the crazy conspiracy, community. Okay, well, I guess Dr. Drew, a well-respected, medical doctor with media credentials coming out is just a conspiracy nut too.
Yeah, people have to understand the immense PR, the immense money, the immense number of people who are actually controlling every single aspect. I mean, presidential campaigns have specific people who just pick out color that the person is supposed to wear, specific words, they frame and prop up everything. Every question that's asked to Hillary Clinton is pre-approved before it's even asked. I have seen this directly unfolded in front of me with Condoleezza Rice when she was doing a public event and a Q&A session. She was doing one at Barnes & Noble's. Every single question that she was asked the same exact question later on the same day on the Jon Stewart show. And she was just Secretary of State. Now imagine if you're running for president, how much PR, how much control, how much censorship, how much just insecurity there is about coming off perfect. So that's why that happened. But I wanted to get information from you about the latest emails that have been coming out, because we are seeing Hillary Clinton's assistant in emails being worried about her health, making sure that she naps, making sure that she's okay to even go out and have meetings if she's fit to even do so. But there's one right now that came out saying that she's researching Parkinson's prescription medication. Is that true?
Yeah, apparently, well, email is is really bad for Hillary Clinton. It's leaving a paper trail everywhere she goes. And, of course, that has come out recently that she was inquiring about Parkinson's medication. She was concerned about it. And then there was another email that came out regarding her cracked skull. They'd inquired to the NFL regarding concussions. So there's a lot of information that's coming from within the campaign itself that is raising questions that basically admits that the campaign is fully aware of her health problems. And then there was another email. I couldn't believe it when I read it. That it was almost like a specialized care email and how to handle Hillary Clinton in the morning. You know, like, be very gentle with her. She's often confused. You know, don't use bright lights. And it was like really like wow, this is like kid glove this woman, or else she's going to bite your face off. And you know, she's going to be on bath salts one day, and you're not going to know about it, and it's going to be over for you. But I mean, of course, I kid on that part. But the point I'm trying to make is that the campaign is well aware. The email, the leaks, and the hacks have proven that. And then they go on national television and they make light of it as if it's not really happening. So there's a double standard, a clear cover up from the campaign to suppress this information from the American people. And we're bringing it to you here, and people need to know.
And of course, with other emails coming out showing how Hillary Clinton's campaign has been manipulating the mainstream media, when we're seeing them shilling for her, saying, don't worry about this, don't talk about this, it's just a conspiracy theory, let's not talk about this at all, that's when we're going to talk about it. Gary, thank you so much for your excellent research and work on this important subject. Check out Gary's channel in the description below. Subscribe to his channel. And now we're going to continue the conversation about Hillary Clinton's greater implications, greater role in utterly destroying American foreign policy on Gary's channel.
Luke Rudowski, We Are Change. We Are Change on YouTube. Subscribe, and wearechange.org. Go check them out. Now, when it comes to Hillary's health, you know, the whole seizure thing, I've watched a lot of people have seen the one where she's on stage with Bill, and then, you know, I think it was the balloons dropping, and she kind of like looks up and like kind of like a seizure look, or surprise seizure, you know, combination. But then I also seen a clip, and it was her. I can't remember if she was at a restaurant or where she was. But she was talking to some ladies, and then she started laughing, and then it went into that exact same look. And it looked like uncontrollable seizure. So I tend to believe, and plus I've seen the photos with that supposed Secret Service doctor or whatever, with the little seizure pen, and you have to ask these questions. And it's funny when they try to dance around it, because both left and right mainstream media and pundits constantly talk crap about Ron Paul. And yes, he's an older person that has stayed healthy for his age and worked out. If we're supposed to look at Ron Paul, then why are we not looking at Hillary Clinton? And most people are, but the mainstream media is trying to brush it off. They may talk about her, being on late night TV opening jars of pickles that have already been opened. But they're not talking about the emails. Why is that? Because they are trying to make a picture with only one narrative. And it's that her health is not to be questioned. I think there's quite a bit of evidence out there that say that her health should be in question. Because I look at interviews that she had, debates that she had, and discussions she had before this supposed concussion. It might have been verified concussion, but you see two different people before and after. The one after tends to be a little bit more what seems to be unpolished. When before she always seemed like she was, even though you disagreed with what she said and her supposed facts, she portrayed it like she was an expert on everything. She had that polished, intellectual, appearance. And you don't see that. She kind of like a little, not quite wacky, but a little unbalanced, maybe. And I think that we really are going to see one of the two main party candidates elected. If people go third party, that'd be cool. But I just don't see it happening. That doesn't say don't do it. That doesn't say go against your own principles and vote for one of the two to keep the other one out. If you are going to vote third party, vote third party. If you're following your gut and your principle that, the two main parties, neither one's, a good option, do what you know is right. Find that good option. Now, we've seen how quick Bernie Sanders supporters were basically pushed aside. And at a lot of the Republican events, we've seen a thuggish attitude by some involved with campaigning for Trump. Not all. But there was definitely a presence. And the thing about that is we're going to have people that are going to vote for one of the two candidates for the simple fact that they don't want the other one to get power. Not realizing that if they all could find someone that, hey, is not talking about controlling anyone. Someone with true freedom philosophy, we could overthrow the current political system. Instead, you go with someone that he's not political. He's an outsider, and I hope that if he becomes president, Trump, that he does good for the country. But I don't trust someone that can move away from what they talk about, one direction to the other, and that don't hold the same principles. Maybe he does, but he's not showing it for political points. Therefore, I can't vote for him. Someone that has said things that go against the Constitution and the simple philosophy of freedom, individual freedom. Things he said have gone against limited to no government philosophy. He has said things that are on the opposite spectrum of freedom. I can't support that. But if you don't vote for him, Hillary, you're playing the duopoly that does not work. It's a fallacy, and it is exactly what creates the system that we have now. Is that you are willing to vote for one person to keep the other person out. Well, then what? We're just not supposed to vote? Well, listen, the other side has that same feeling. We don't really like this candidate. We're just voting for that candidate to keep the other person out. Both sides right now, a majority of them, are voting for their candidate to keep the other one out. If both majorities realize that, hey, how about we just find someone that doesn't pander to either of us, but says that we have the right to live our lives as we choose without abridging other people's rights, and live on that principle, you win. But no, we keep playing into the voting system as it's set up. Why would they fight against Trump if he's an outsider to the Republican Party. He's not an insider of the Republican Party. They wanted their own puppet in there. That's why. But now they have him as the nominee. With Romney, they just didn't give him support. With Trump, he doesn't need their support. It's really going to be an interesting election. Not because it's a belief in the election system, but to see what comes out of this and what craziness comes out of this. I've had people that have assured me that Trump is the real deal. I have some people that have campaigned, said that he's the real deal. So I look at it as, if you feel that way, vote for him. This election, I don't know what I'm going to do. more than likely sit it out. Sometimes I just want to go write in random stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. For a lot of us, it's become a waiting game. And we have a lot of things coming out about Hillary. And I think that it's putting Trump more and more in a place to become the winner. You know, one candidate that I heard he talked good. I haven't really researched him. Constitutional Party candidate. I urge people to go listen to some of what he talks about. I'm going to look into him, and maybe we can discuss that in another broadcast. But a lot of people have been in search of that candidate, and I just don't think we're there as a society. I hope someone can prove me wrong, but I just don't see us being there. Now, there was talk in there about Google hiding Clinton body count, which had become a big search term. And Google is censoring that. So Google has basically been on the side of the left and been in and out of the White House. They have talked in the past of censorship and talking as they were going to do it to prevent violent actions by people. But more and more we see that they are truly using it for political means. People have expressed that about Facebook, Twitter, Google, and the censorship of many of these groups. I was debating on what I really wanted to play first, but I think I'm only going to play one of them. Okay, yeah, I'm only going to play one of these. This one, hardcore financial collapse coming. From AMTV, Christopher Green. Here we go. And the thing about this is, yeah, it won't load. I knew that was going to happen. Let me restart this. Now, I'm not going to play that clip. It's a little bit longer of one than the other one, so we'll go to the other one. But let me reload this. With this uncertainty, that this next stream of quantitative easing, and basically the collapse of the U.S. dollar, the U.S. economy, the U.S. infrastructure, and manufacturing, we already have a large workforce that is part-time, no longer on unemployment, but unemployed. And we have more vacant homes than we have homeless people. Our schooling system sucked already, and we introduced Common Core to allow it to suck and pass some sort of standard that allows children not to have to learn, just be able to explain why they came up with what they came up with. Good enough. Kind of like a politician. Can you lie in a convincing way that explains your wrong answer? You can, great. We might have you run for president someday, and we'll just tell you how to do things. I'll go ahead and play this clip over Google hiding Clinton's body count from AMTV. It's a little shorter. I'll cover a little bit more here, so I'll go ahead and do that. So let's get past this. Here we go.
And now the too big to fail tech, corporate, monopolistic establishment is working 24/7 to censor the truth and to hide critical information. Because again, people like the Google founders meet with the White House a couple times a week, actually. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, who's against Donald Trump building a wall, is actually building a massive wall in Hawaii. I think the island of Kauai, just destroying the view and the open air access to his property. I think he spent over $100 million because he's so, progressive, and he's so pro immigration and anti the wall that Donald Trump wants. But he builds a massive wall on his own property because that's just how he rolls. But they are working, these people like the Zucky, who spend millions of dollars on personal bodyguards and protection a year. They're obviously very politically activated, and I would argue stronger than the U.S. government today because they are the government, and they are this tech monopoly that rules everything now. Again, America makes nothing anymore. Nothing. Not a gosh darn thing. Not a physical product or good. All we do in America now, we are a texting economy. That's right. We just social media. That's our value here in the United States now. Everybody's a social media tycoon. Text messages add value. And we see this, again, from the likes of Facebook, Google, and Apple, which has really gone down the tubes ever since Steve Jobs passed away, are now working around the clock 24/7 a day to hide facts from you, the people. New York Times tech columnist calls on Google to hide critical Hillary health info. Go online and put it down, Hillary Clinton illness, and take a look at the videos yourself, Rudy Giuliani goes to say. And then Manju of the Times calls for Google to censor, kind of this Orwellian planet that we live today, fix the problem of search results possibly hurting the Democratic nominee. I've read reports, data-oriented reports, that say Google has the ability to skew election results some 20 to 40%, just based on their search algorithm. Well, I want you to think about that for a minute. Google has the ability, according to some data sets that I've researched, to skew the results, especially among people that are undecided. They're not politically inclined. They're just hearing kind of a lot of noise right now. They're not politically activated like maybe you and I are, and they don't have all the evidence. Google has the ability to skew the election some 20 to 40%, especially among that group of people that are undecided. So you have to understand, I think you know this, and I'm preaching to the choir, that we are at war with this political and big tech establishment, which is doing everything in their power to make sure Hillary is their girl. Give her a little slap on the ass. Hillary is her girl. Because they know that she works for them. Google is now hiding the Clinton body count search suggestions. The Clinton body count is an infamous list of alleged murders connected to the Clintons. When a web user searches for Clinton body on Bing or Yahoo, for example, the suggested results all relate to the Clinton body count controversy. However, search for the same term on Google, Clinton body, only returns suggestions related to auto repair shops. Seriously. And nothing to do with the Clinton body count. Now go ahead and try this for yourself right now. Put in Clinton body count on Bing or Clinton body count on Yahoo, and then compare it to Clinton body count on Google. And you'll get search results, as we printed out here, like Clinton body shop is what you get on Google. Clinton body shop. I'm just really having trouble kind of making up the rest of the words here, but nothing to do with, and maybe they've changed this now, because now this has been pushed out by alternative media. Everybody knows this to be true, so let us know if it's been changed. They change the Google algorithm, I think, some 600 times a year, they say. I'm sure a lot of the changes, though, are made in secret. But this is what we're dealing with among the tech establishment, these monopolies that nobody seems to care about. I remember when they brought these antitrust lawsuits, wasn't it in the 1990s against Microsoft because it was getting too big? It was getting too out of control, them taking over, the PC software market. So they had to go after them. Well, not anymore. You see, all our economy is, I even heard Carl Icahn, who will be, and is a part of the, will be a part of the, the Trump train, a part of his cabinet likely if Trump gets into the White House, talking about how we no longer have an economy and that we're going to have to pay the piper at some point in the not too distant future. Not everybody can be a social media star. And we've really kind of just sold ourselves, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, this is what I do. I've been doing this nearly 10 years now. This is my profession. I mean, I did it when people said it was crazy, that I was a lunatic, that I saw the potential in what we do today. I was laughed at, demeaned. People talked behind my back. Now I'm a consultant to both of these people, charging them, hourly rate that an attorney charges. But my point being is that not everybody is a social media star. That the economy has to create more value than just text messages for this shit show to sustain itself long term. We need physical products, physical goods. The country has to do something. It can't all just be an algorithm. So Google and others are censoring the Clinton body count search results, as well as, and this just turned up, FBI files, I pulled this morning, related to Hillary Clinton in the Vince Foster suicide go missing. The actual hardcore evidence. Ronald Kessler, former Washington Post, a Wall Street Journal investigative reporter, is the New York Times best-selling author of The First Family Detail. Secret Service agents reveal the hidden lives of the presidents and the secrets of the FBI. Now, this is rather lengthy, so I'm not going to go over all of it, but Vince Foster, many of you, are well aware of, know who he was. He was suicided, is, what they say happened to him, even though Hillary went on a tantrum. Because we know that this is a very violent, volatile woman, and basically just lashed out at him. I'm paraphrasing a bit in front of, her board and everybody, and, her administration at the time, whatever she was doing politically, and just said that, he had failed her and failed us, and just really pissed all over him with her fabrication of a feminazi dick, and made him feel so bad, that in the best case scenario, he killed himself. Worst case, he was suicided by Hillary Clinton. But isn't it convenient? This is a long laundry list. We've gone over a lot of this, folks. There's a lot of people like Vince Foster. But again, they don't want you to know the truth, and it's why they're going to censor this information. I talk about this all the time. It's getting harder and harder to uncover the truth because of this monopolistic web that makes up these too big to fail tech tycoons and giants that make up, these companies that you're all well too familiar with.
AMTV, Alternative Media Television, Christopher Green. AMTV on YouTube. Now, if you've ever looked into the Clinton body count, and the Clinton body count wasn't really going, hey, they did it. What it did was it showed the astounding amount of people that, as the Clintons were coming up the political ladder, were very, very close and very, very involved in the Clintons' lives and their them getting elected and pushed up this political ladder and gaining more and more influence. And a lot of these people ended up dying. Suicide, mysterious deaths, which many have looked at and said, that's an alarming amount of people, that it does get to the amount of people that you have to go, what if this isn't, some conspiracy, then it's really kind of one of those couples that you don't want to get to know because superstition and, they have the worst luck possible that all their friends and close confidants end up dead. But I would actually be worried now, less about the Clinton body count and more about really Hillary and Bill both being puppets. I believe that these are two individuals that, if they have these many secrets out there, that there's no way that they can hide them. And that they probably easily can be blackmailed. Look how she handled her emails. And I think Trump could be sweet talk, like Putin's done with them. Now, when we look at the possibility of either one, we don't look at Hillary as ever an option. Then when we go to Trump, there's a lot of people that consider him a possibility or an option or not an option. It's a little wide of a spectrum. Not saying Hillary doesn't have hers. But I'm talking more libertarian, conservative side of this. You don't see anybody going, I'm going to pick Hillary over Trump. What you do see is people breaking off to go third party. Over on Hillary's side, you have a little bit of the same thing going on. And they're going Green Party. But I've also heard talk of some of them going Libertarian Party. Which kind of, I was for Bernie, now I'm going to be for Gary Johnson, which I look at Gary Johnson as more of a I don't even know anymore. He tends to feed into a lot of what the Bernie Sanders supporters want to hear, but he has more connections with the GOP. So it tends to make me wonder if, he's really playing a hell of a game. And I really want to hear more about the Constitutional Party candidate. And people know where I stand on that. I believe that's only a step towards a freer society. I don't think it should be the end game. But I'm willing to go towards, more of a constitutional government, limited federal government, to bring the power back towards the communities instead of centralizing it. And with Hillary, I see more of a globalist reach. But I also had someone, pose this. Trump has dealt and made dealings all around the world. Would he not be somewhat of a possible candidate or a world order? And I thought about it, and it kind of did stun me a little bit. And I think if it is, I think that's where the whole relation to the Nazi Germany would come from, is that he's a nationalist and he would do that, but he would want the U.S. to be the power structure, where you would have Clinton looking at the United Nations and giving up our sovereignty. Where I think if Trump was to be that person, he would secure the United States and make it the power structure. And that's where the relation to Nazi Germany come into play. So, I don't know, take everything with a grain of salt. Do your own research. Look into all the candidates out there. And remember, voting in the long run, you're still playing their game. So if you're willing to play their game, they're willing to screw you over. It's when you have a plan to use their game against you that you can finally defeat it. But that's the problem I see with this election cycle, is there is no possible candidate out there that could play the game to change the game. Trump, what are you talking about? Trump is doing that. Well, if you don't understand what I'm saying, you don't understand who I am in my philosophy, which I've really repeated over and over on this broadcast. And I'm not going to be a Trump supporter just to be a Trump supporter, to jump on some bandwagon. If you're going to vote for Trump and you believe in him, then, good for you, but that doesn't convince me that I should, just because you are. But that's okay. We all have our own paths that we have to take. And all I really want to see is that no matter what, that the future that us as a society decide to take is one of acceptance and the knowledge of what true freedom is, how to have a free society where you don't have to agree with lifestyles, you don't have to agree with other people's opinions, but no one has the right to abridge another person's right to free speech, self-defense. That the core natural rights of any being are upheld. But that's not going to come from some president. That's going to come from a demand by society. That when one person starts getting bullied because they choose to live a different lifestyle, but they've always been peaceful and never abridged other people's rights, that people would stand up and go, hey, we don't agree either, but, he's not harming people. He's not abridging other people's property rights. He's not forcing other people to, give up their right to self-defense. That's up to society. And if that ever comes, that's when we will see a total change. Glad to announce the storms have passed through, and I don't see us losing electricity. Second here. Okay. I want to play a quick clip by Reason TV about the libertarian migration to New Hampshire following the completion of the Free State Project's petition. So I want to get into that here.
The libertarians, who I'm afraid will be disappointed in November, will look at the Free State Project as a way that they can actually go and make a difference at a smaller level with more impact.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and today we're talking with Matt Phillips. He's the president of the Free State Project, which has succeeded in its initial goal of getting 20,000 people to pledge to move to New Hampshire and create a modern Galt's Gulch that actually works. So, Matt, thanks for talking to Reason.
Good to be here.
Earlier this year, you hit the 20,000 mark. So that begins something called the Great Migration. Talk a little bit about what the timeline is for people moving there, and then what are they going to do when they get there?
So people pledge to move within 5 years of hitting that 20,000 number. And we've already got 2,000 that have already moved in advance over the last several years. And another 2,500 who already live there, who have signed the same statement of intent. So we're now in the process of going and calling the remaining 18,000 and growing people to say, hey, we triggered the move. Do you need resources? Can we connect you? Help you figure out where you're going to live, get you a job.
And the Free State Project has been around for over a decade now. So you have a community, a network of people and helpers, right?
Yeah, it was formed in 2001. Jason Sorens wrote the original article proposing the idea. By 2003, they had selected New Hampshire as the destination, and then it's just been slowly, organically growing since then.
The Free State Project people have had significant impact on New Hampshire. Talk about some of the highlights so far, and then what you're hoping to see, by the end of this year or over the next year or so.
There's something like 18 Free Staters who are state reps in New Hampshire that have had a variety of legislative wins. Off the top of my head, we got rid of all the knife laws in New Hampshire.
So it was illegal to carry.
There were various laws about types of knives and when you can carry them, and there is now no law in the books referring to knives in New Hampshire. Several years ago, we reduced the state budget by 10%. Former president of the Free State Project, Carla Garrick, had a really landmark court case in New Hampshire that affirmed the right to film the police in public. Then there's a lot of out-of-system activism where people are, trading with Bitcoin and having community market days and, getting together as families. So there's a good mix of activism that people are doing in New Hampshire.
How does the Free State Project intersect with the 2016 election? Like, will you guys be doing stuff in New Hampshire that will about national politics, or is it local politics?
So the Free State Project itself is a 501c3 nonprofit, so we can't endorse candidates or active legislation. But many of the people who are there, because of the Free State Project, are involved both at the national and the state and local level. And they're either running for office directly themselves, or they're supporting candidates who are, or they're volunteering with organizations like Americans for Prosperity that are doing various issue-based campaigns around things like right to work.
Are you guys going to get rid of state-owned liquor stores in New Hampshire? That would seem like an easy win.
It would be, except for the fact that it also provides a huge amount of revenue for the state. And we actually sell more booze per capita than any of the states around us. So a lot of people cross over the border to buy, because even though it's a monopoly, it's still cheaper because of the lower taxes.
Oh, that's fascinating. You became the president of the Free State Project earlier this year. Talk about your work history. Where did you come from, and how did you come to be a libertarian?
So I went to Princeton, where I got a degree in politics, but while I was there, I did a summer internship at the Cato Institute in DC, which is actually how I met Jason Sorens. He and I were fellow interns together. So I was studying politics, but I was writing about technology. So my senior thesis was on cryptography and privacy. And after I graduated, I went to work in New York City at DoubleClick, the online internet advertising pioneer. And I worked there for about 4 years, and then left with a colleague to co-found another company called Right Media to basically do a real-time auction marketplace for online advertising. And I did that for 4 years, and then I got bought by Yahoo in 2007. So I took some time off and was casting around, trying to figure out what I was going to do next in my life. I wanted to do something that would be intellectually challenging, but also maybe help make the world a better place. And I started going to some various libertarian conferences. I went to the Reason Cruise we were just talking about in 2012. And then I went to a Liberty Forum in 2013. And
that's the winter event of the Free State Project.
That's our annual winter event up in Manchester. And, I had signed the statement of intent 10 years ago, right when I was starting my company. And so I was like, okay, New Hampshire, I can't deal with that right now. Fast forward 10 years, I went up there not really knowing what to expect, and was just blown away by how many people there were and how much excitement and energy and buzz. And I started to think, oh, wow, maybe this is something that I've got to.
You mentioned you were an intern in college at Cato. So did you show up to college libertarian? And if so, what's your libertarian origin story?
The earliest thing I can point to is that in high school, as a public speaking exercise, all the seniors had to give a short speech. And one of my classmates gave a talk about hemp regulation, not about the marijuana drug side of it, just about the industrial side of it. And I think that sort of sparked a little question of like, yeah, hey, wait a minute, why? That doesn't make any sense. Why do we do that?
You know, a lot of libertarians, and we're speaking here at Freedom Fest, and a lot of libertarians are either super optimistic about the future or terribly pessimistic. And, you know, the future, the country's been ruined since 1789 or something. You're more of an optimist. What obviously the Free State Project is, you know, creating liberty or freedom in a lifetime, as part of the slogan goes. But why are you optimistic? And, you know, and where does that lead you?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. You know, what we're doing in New Hampshire, I get to see sort of day in, day out. I get emails from people that are, you know, say, hey, I'm moving. So I see what we're doing is really on the cusp of starting to generate some pretty exciting results. And that affords me the luxury of not worrying so much about what's happening, the disaster that's happening at the national level. Regardless of who wins or loses come this fall, we're still going to be doing what we're doing. And hopefully, you know, the libertarians who I'm afraid will be disappointed in November will, you know, look at the Free State Project as a way that they can actually go and make a difference at a smaller level with more impact.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
We've been talking with Matt Phillips. He's the president of the Free State Project. Check it out online at freestateproject.org and move to New Hampshire. You won't be sorry. For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
Again, Reason TV on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, check out a lot of their videos with interesting libertarian people. And, you know, the Free State Project, something that I've kind of championed from its conception. I am not a signer. I have a mission here in Indiana. There is a large freedom base here in Indiana. There's other issues in Indiana, a lot of other issues, but I think there is a large libertarian philosophy that is here in Indiana, and you've seen it with Ron Paul running back in 2008, and you've seen it in 2012, but I'm talking about the original, you know, modern Tea Party movement that started back in 07, even back in 06 is kind of when it started getting kicked off, and when, you know, I first really came across a lot of the buzz over the coming election and wanting to, you know, get Ron Paul to run. And that's when I really got into a lot of the philosophy and kind of started my shift from constitutional to libertarian, because a lot of what Ron Paul talked about was a libertarian philosophy, but using the Constitution as a way to start limiting the federal government like it is written to do, instead of manipulating it. And then we can actually start having true intellectual conversations about freedom and society and how to act without having, you know, a master about true anarchy, not what the left, you know, commies want to call anarchy. What they call anarchy is what the media has tried to portray anarchists as, and these people grew up as rebellious people that go, okay, well, that's what anarchy is. That's what I'm going for because I don't like the system now. When true anarchy is not about not having rules or just creating chaos to break down the current system. It's about a philosophy of not having a ruler, but still understanding natural law, natural rules. That in a free society, you can't just go abridge other people's rights, and when you attempt to, that society stands up against it. Right now, we have a society that will beg government to suppress others. because they disagree with them. And a lot of that is due to things that government does. So you're asking government to fix the problems that it creates. And they will, by creating more problems. We play this tug of war, and government keeps getting bigger the whole time. When that happens, that is what creates dictators, empires, and systems that really neglect the people en masse for the few elite, which then leads to violence if they don't create the violence first to justify becoming dictators. Then the second wave of violence will come when finally the society's broken down. Or you might even have where the, kind of like the Soviet Union, where they kind of, slowly broke apart. Even though there was a lot of chaos within the ranks, and we know that it wasn't as smooth as some would like to portray it as, but it definitely wasn't a complete violent, just full on civil war. But those are what are usually created to justify putting in a stronger centralized government. That could even come from foreign help for a global police. And we know that there's already been talk about global police forcing by many of the elite. Again, I've been pushing real hard, and this isn't just to you. I mean, this is to my family. People around me, coworkers, friends. I've been just telling people, prepare. Just have things in case there is chaos. If Trump gets elected, will they these Soros linked, well, they're linked to foundations that Soros is linked to. There's Soros admitting to his foundation in Ukraine, and it being somewhat instrumental in the overthrow of that elected government. Will any of these groups create a civil war? We've already seen the riots, how much violence some of these groups can carry out. Cities on lockdown. It's almost like small drills for a major one. And is that where we're headed? Is there enough of a society with half a brain to be able to stand up against it if it starts to go that direction? We already see it happening in these areas, and the community is against it, but it seems like they're helpless to do anything against it. And you watch as law enforcement stands by and lets it happen. Because more than likely they have a stand-down order. not to engage as cities burn down. And a lot of times we find out a lot of these people inciting a lot of this violence aren't even from that area. Again, prepare. Be prepared for even natural disasters, as we've seen down around Baton Rouge and around Louisiana. And we've seen that the Cajun Navy has been successful. Now they're facing, the bureaucracy that is trying to prevent them from, doing something that they're actually able to do successfully while government fails on many levels. And you see these people have prepared. So that's why it's so important to prepare. We are coming up to the end of the broadcast. So talking about preparing, if you go to ucy.tv, you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll see that Amazon button, that famous Amazon button. If you click that, you'll shop Amazon through ucy.tv. You get the same great deal, same great shipping rate, and at the same time, you're helping UCY cover operating costs. That allows them to bring you broadcasts like this one and all the other broadcasts on this network. So go check them out. Go to ucy.tv, scroll down to the bottom, click that Amazon button, and shop Amazon. I know many of you already shop Amazon. Again, same great deal, same great shipping rates. And UCY uses a little kickback from that to help cover the operating costs. And, you can always click the UCY support tab towards the top there and donate if you want. And it's really imperative that, our supporters are there backing us because they are trying to slowly but surely censor the internet and censor alternative media so they can keep their narrative going. So networks like UCY are great for battling the mainstream propaganda, and it's the supporters like you that help this become possible. So thanks again. And, gold, silver, I personally look at it as an option to hold on to wealth, not gain wealth, not lose wealth, but to hold on to the value of your current assets. And I personally shop at Moggy Metals. And if you go right now to antityrannynews.com/metal, that will take you to Moggy Metals. And just like UCY's little Amazon link, this one, you get the same great deal, same great shipping rate, and at the same time, we get a little kickback to cover our operating costs on this end, which, updating equipment becomes very expensive very quickly with the advancement of technology, and the faster the computers get, the more algorithm a lot of the websites start using, and it becomes something where older systems will get, outran by the websites themselves. And we have to always constantly try to keep up on our equipment on both ends of this, so your support always helps. And don't forget, antityrannynews.com/MyPatriot. Check out My Patriot Supply. Many of you already know about all the great deals at My Patriot Supply with the non-GMO seeds and the water filtration units. Go check out antityrannynews.com/MyPatriot. And again, also /metals to take care of my metals. And, don't forget UCY.tv, Amazon.